Ligris, your real estate attorney, and I am super excited because I'm here with two amazing guys. First and foremost, we have Fernando Perez from Wise Investment Group. What's up?
What's going on, guys?
Hey. And Doug Perry, loan officer from Cross Country. How are you,
What's
Doug?
up, guys? Great, great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm super excited because these are guys, I mean, we go way back with Fernando, like way back. Um,
Right.
yeah, it's been forever, and I've just it's awesome to see you grow in your career and just like kill it. So obviously for home buyers out there who are watching, like I think the big question always is like, how is a home buying process, and how is the process like with you as an agent?
Well, I mean, that's a mouthful question,
I
but I'll try
know.
to narrow it down and break it down. One of the biggest things, I'm going on 10 years and doing real estate now, and one of the best things that I've found that is when you're working with a first-time home buyer or an experienced home buyer or home seller, right, who's looking to sell their house, what they like is simplicity.
Mm,
You can't tell a first-time home buyer and say, hey, first-time home buyer, go find me a loan officer that's good. Go find me a real estate attorney that's gonna get the job done, right? That doesn't happen. So it's
right.
like one of the things that I like to present to my clients is I like to give them that one-stop shop, right? I'm gonna bring you a real estate attorney that gets it done. I'm gonna bring you a loan officer that can get stuff done. What that allows me to do is make that transition for that first-time home buyer that much smoother because one, they're going to be involved with a team that's going to surround them and walk them through the whole process to make sure that it gets stuff done. Because let's be honest, in the world we live in today, things are so much complex. You have the internet that makes things worse.
Yeah.
It could be a good thing, but it makes it worse. But in today's modern day, is like it's important that a realtor can not only educate the consumer, but make them feel comfortable. Make them feel that if I'm going to be working with Barletta is because she's one of the best in the business. If I'm going to be working with cross country over with my boy Doug, it's like we're going to get it done. We're not going to tell you. I'm a firm believer in if I give you my word and we're going to get something done, it's because we're going to get it done. It's not we're not going to beat around the bush or or sell false expectations, right? So it's like in real estate, you want to make sure you provide that stuff, right? Because a lot of the things that happens is a lot of people want to start the journey of real estate investing, buying their first real estate, or possibly selling their first piece of real estate. That can be an emotional roller coaster sometimes, right? But it's like as long as you can let that client know that you got their back,
Yeah.
meaning you're working with me, you're in good hands. I'm going to make sure that we see this through, and you got a good staff, good team to work with. So
Yeah.
to me, it's really, really important that you have a good, solid team around you that's going to make that transition or that experience that much better.
That's huge. And it actually is a testament. I mean, we recently closed on a transaction where this was someone who had worked with you before, and they just knew
Yeah.
they were comfortable. They know that like
Yeah.
you get stuff done, you have the team, you like bring them
Yeah.
all together, and it just is a seamless transaction. Like most clients are always like, wow, that was it. Like that was a bit hard, you know? Because I feel like there's this expectation in people's minds that like this is like such an arduous process. And of course, there are things that can come up, and like, not every transaction is perfect and easy, but like when you have the team assembled, and that sort of alleviates a lot of the concern, I feel like.
It does. One of the things that I've learned in my real estate career is that our job is to put out fires,
Mhm.
right? Put out fires and keep a cool atmosphere. Meaning like if, excuse my French, if shit's hitting the fan, my clients will never know because
Right.
Fernando got this taking cover. Like everything me and my team are taking care of all that stuff in the back end. So my clients don't take that burden of the stress because they don't need it.
Right.
Right. If you tell like this, I mean, I can go on for days, but when it comes to a first time home buyer, you're trying to explain an appraisal process and repairs and title issues and all this stuff. A lot of the times that's too much information,
Totally.
right? Too much information. What they care about, what's their rate? What's
Yeah.
their mortgage payment? If it's a multifamily, what's going to be, what are the tenants going to be paying? Like they want to know what's worse in case. Those are the things that they worry about.
Meat
So
and
to me,
potatoes. Yeah.
yeah, to me, it's like I want my clients to worry about the important stuff. That's it. Let us take the burden of all the bullshit that
Yeah,
they don't need to worry about.
it's
And
true.
then that's going to make this so much smoother for them. Because the last thing you want, to be honest, is for a client to have a very bad experience because A, we didn't take the time to explain it, or B, we didn't walk them through that process correctly or explain it correctly to the point where they're like, okay, I'm confused, I'm lost, I don't know what's going on. And at
Like
this point, it's
expectation
like,
setting.
exactly, it's huge. You have to have those expectations set, and it's important. That's why you have a team. Because, for example, like I've worked with Doug several years now. I mean, me and him put out so many fires together, you too, right? But it's confident. I can confidently say that you guys are able and capable of doing such things, right? And then I've had other experiences where it was a lot harder, and sometimes honestly I couldn't deliver. I had to reroute and head over to Doug and have Doug close the stuff up. But it's like having the staff around you
Yeah.
that can get it done. It's the most important part.
It's true because it's sometimes it's about, even though this is like kind of the same type of process, but like every deal is different, and like, you know, you have to sometimes think outside of the box to get something done. And I
Oh
know that
yeah.
you guys do that really well.
Oh yeah.
And
Doug,
Doug,
Doug is infamous for that.
I know. He gets it
I
done.
do.
He like thinks outside the box and how the transaction can move it forward. But generally, Doug, like for a first time home buyer, like, do you want to talk a little bit about just sort of the process with you, like how it starts?
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off what Fernando was just saying, it's full disclosure, it's education, it's getting them prepared, it's holding their hands, it's explaining everything to them before they start looking for a home, so that they know what to expect, so that there's no surprises after the offer goes in. They know what their rate is, they know what their payment is. We go over closing costs, we go over down payment, we go over prepaid taxes and insurance, we go over when their first payments due. So many people come to me, maybe they got referred, maybe they got pre-approved by their bank, and then they come to me as a second opinion. Not to talk smack about banks, but some
They
there's some people
suck.
that, they don't do a very good job explaining things and holding hands. And it's not just banks, it's other mortgage companies too. But people will come to me and they've already been pre-approved, and I'm like, okay, have you talked about your comfortable price point? Have you talked about, what kind of mortgage payment you can afford on a monthly basis? Have you talked about what a mortgage payment is made of? Have you talked about down payment and closing costs and prepaids? And they're like, no, I don't know what any of that is. And I'm like, what? And they give you a pre-approval letter and say, go find a house? Like, you're setting yourself up for failure. So it's all about getting them prepared, getting them educated. You don't want them looking at $1 million houses if they can only afford a mortgage payment on a 500,000 house, and it happens all the time. It's easy to fall in love with a house, not
Yes.
so easy to fall in love with a mortgage payment. Um, so,
That's,
and it's the team approach is huge. I mean, when we've got the proper team in place, then we know everything's going to go through nice and smooth. And at the end of the transaction, the buyer's happy, the seller's happy, everybody's it's full transparency from start to finish. And when a customer walks away from the closing happy, then that means
We did our job.
that's
yeah,
it.
we did our job well, and they're gonna refer us. And if all it takes is one weak link in the chain to make a buyer walk away from a deal with a
Blow it
bad
all up.
taste in their mouth, and if I screw up a deal and Fernando does awesome, then he may not get referrals from that buyer because they just had a bad taste in their mouth. Not because he did anything wrong, because maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I shouldn't be using myself as an example. I did something wrong. But you see what I'm saying? Like, you got to have that team in place. Everybody's got to kick ass and take names throughout the entire process. That way, after the closing, the buyer and the seller are like, oh my God, this team kicks ass. Like, we're going to tell our friends and family members and coworkers to use them when
Exactly.
they're going to buy or sell a
100%.
house.
100%.
And one thing that you said that I think is super important, because so you talked about like the pre-approval process, and like some other lenders, some big banks, they'll just kind of give you a letter and you go, and in reality you shouldn't be, potentially buying something at that price
Right.
comfortably or at all, because maybe they didn't like actually look at your W-2s and 1099s or all the things.
Right.
And I think everyone's human. So if you go start looking at open houses and you think you're going to be able to buy an $800,000 house because of a paper that really means nothing from a bank who didn't look at anything, and in reality you can only buy something for 500, like that is a different home. And especially in this market where you may have to be going at asking or a little bit above asking to get that, like you are just setting yourself up for like the mental failure in a sense, like you're just a bad experience.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
it's
and
crazy.
I've had it happen before. Like I
Yeah.
tell people, I do the pre-approval. I gather up all the documents I need to calculate the income, make sure the deal is going to fly through with no issues, and then we do a consultation call to review. And I tell them, I'm like, I'm going to give you a pre-approval letter, but that doesn't mean go make an offer and then tell me about it after. I'm going to give
Yeah.
you a pre-approval letter to let you know you're ready to go. You find a house you like, get in touch with me. Call me, text me the address. Before you make the offer, I want you to know what the rate is, what the payment is, how much money you have to come up with. And 99% of the time, people listen to me because they get it. They don't want
Yeah.
to set themselves up for failure. But then other times, if all of a sudden they're working with an agent that isn't familiar with me and they're just running around rogue making offers on places without checking with me, they'll come to me on Monday morning and be like, Doug, great news, I got an offer accepted on a house. I'm like, okay, sweet. You forgot rule number one. You're supposed to check with me before you make an offer. And they're like, okay, my bad, it was busy and it was Sunday and offers are due by 3 and I didn't have a choice. I'm like, okay, whatever. That's how every deal is. You had a choice, you could have reached out to me. And I'm like, okay, give me the address. What's the purchase price? And they gave it to me, and I'm like, okay, what do you think your monthly mortgage payment is? They're like, I don't know, $3,000. I'm like, no, it's 6. What were you thinking? Like, you got to check with me. You got to you got to work with a good agent who's not. There are a lot of agents that they're like, oh, pre-approval letter, see you later. I'm gonna go make an offer on every
Yeah.
house. Like, and and I don't want to say they're, you gotta keep the team together to make sure everything goes through nice and smooth. So
Yeah.
Just to piggyback off of that, it's crazy because that's one of my biggest pet peeves. Working with first time home buyers, and working with Doug, and one of the things that I've noticed that works for me is that I know how Doug operates, so my job is to make it smooth and easy for him as well, right? I know how Liz operates, so my job is to make it easy and smooth for Liz to operate, right? So it's like just how we mentioned, I have a rule of thumb that I'm not going to show a house to my client without a pre-approval, and two, I'm not a mortgage loan officer by any means, but I understand the very basics of it, right? So it's like, I understand that I can pull up a calculator and do some quick numbers to get that client an estimated mortgage payment, right? So before I even show a house, I'm going to do that because I'm not going to go and waste my time, go see this house, then bother Doug and say, hey, Doug, can we get a proof of this house? Where if I would have just done very simple real estate work in the beginning and did my rough estimate mortgage payment, then we're like, you know what? I didn't, my numbers are 70, 80% just as good. And I think we have a chance. So I'm going to send it to Doug anyway. So have him do the rough numbers, but let's go see this property.
Yeah.
So that way I'm setting the expectation from the very beginning before we even to go see the house, because people make decisions off of emotion. It's just what it
100%,
is.
especially in this area.
In this market is you can't, inventory is low, right? So there's not that many houses out on the market. So people see a beautiful kitchen, a beautiful bathroom. Oh, their emotions are involved. They want to make it. They want to make a quick decision because they might not get another opportunity. But what ends up happening is you're setting up false expectations because they might not even qualify for this property. They might not. So if you set the expectation from the very beginning and you do that little legwork from the beginning, it's gonna not only show the buyer, okay, well, you know what? Fernando's taking the extra steps to ensuring that I'm not wasting my time and showing me something that I can't qualify for. But at the same time, it's going to make the job easier for Doug because Doug already knows that Fernando did X, Y, Z. So it kind of like all commingles together. But at the end of the day, it's like little things that we can all do to make it that much of a better experience for everyone involved.
Yeah.
yeah,
No, it's important. And I feel like obviously the real estate can be fast, but it also can be slow because if there's inventory issues or whatever, or like, you have a client, maybe they're working on credit and So there's just things that can slow down the process generally.
Right.
So I think a lot of people don't necessarily want to invest. I should say a lot of agents don't want to invest the time in like doing that backup work. But you do, and that's like a testament again to like the ease of what like how your clients feel and get stuff done. So that's huge. So right now I feel like a lot of people, because rates are where they are kind of like going through this internal question of, do I try and stay in this market? Do I continue renting? You know, what do you think? I'm interested in hearing both of your takes on it. Obviously the finance part, but also like the equity building part for Fernando.
Yeah, no, I mean, nobody wins by waiting, especially in this market. And and we're not saying that to put pressure on people to buy, because that's how we make money and get paid. But I mean, you ask anybody, I mean, yeah, if anybody was lucky enough to buy a house during COVID, the chances are they've got 20% equity based on appreciation. Chances are they've got an interest rate in the twos. So yay, good for them. A lot of people got lucky and timed it out well. But let's just use like 2022 for example. 2022 is in the rearview mirror. It's the beginning of the year, rates were 3%. By the end of the year, rates were 5%. Despite the interest rate market over the last couple of years, houses are still appreciating. Everything is still multiple offer. A lot of things are still over asking. So if you didn't buy a house in 2022 or even 2023, I mean, you basically just take that price point that you're trying to get to, and you can add 5% year over year onto the value, because houses are still appreciating despite the mortgage rate market. So I mean, the longer you wait, yeah, maybe you'll get an interest rate of 5% instead of 6 or 7%. But guess what? That house that was listed for 600,000 last year is going to be 700,000 this year, because the prices aren't going down. It's simple supply and demand. There's not going to be some crash. There's too many buyers. There's not enough houses. So if you can afford to buy based on today's rates, you should. And then when rates go down in the next year or two or three, you refinance. And then, at least you bought the house for 500 instead of 6 or 700. And then, yeah, you just refinance when rates go down. That's the name of the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he pretty much summed it up. I'm a firm believer in you don't wait and then buy real estate. You buy real estate and then you wait, because you want to position yourself on the owning side, landlord side, investing side, versus the renter who's just every single month throwing money away. I'm a firm believer that I believe everybody should own real estate. It's not that hard. People make it more complicated than it is. I felt like if people had the basic fundamentals of what it is to buy a property, everybody would be owning a property, because it's not that hard. So, that's why back in the days, prior to COVID, I used to do the first time home buyer classes when I used to teach people how easy it is to buy real estate. But in today's market, you have those who are, I wouldn't say intimidated, but I would say more of are scared, right? Or then you have those who are opportunists who say, well, I'm going to wait for the interest rates to drop, and then I'm going to go ahead and buy. But what ends up happening is two things. One, inventory's low. Rates are high right now. Once rates drop, that's going to bring in a whole bunch of buyers back into the game. And then those bids on properties are going to go up. So that means that those properties are going to go up, right? I look at real estate as a like a game of chess. What's my next move based on the current market conditions, right? So it's important that a realtor knows what's going on, because in today's real estate, you just can't put a real estate hard and say, oh, I'm going to go ahead and sell a piece of real estate property. No, you got to know what's going on in the market, right? So I kind of like see what's going on and create a strategy for it, right? So what's a basic strategy that someone can do today? It's really simple, right? In the next, I say, I'm not a guru, or I don't have a magic 8 ball, but I believe anyone who buys in the next 90 days, maybe 4 months, is going to be in a good position to refinance 8 to 12 months down the road.
Mhm.
Why? Because they're gonna buy before the prices creep up. Yes, the interest rate is higher than the normal, but people are comparing it to something that was unheard of, that 3%, that 3.25, 2. That's never gonna happen. That's never
Never
ever
gonna happen
coming
again.
back. So what ends up happening is you talk to these millennials who say, well, I'm gonna wait for it to come back to 3.25%. They think that 7% is something of out of the world, right? But what ends up happening is they talk themselves out of buying a real estate property.
Yeah.
They're too scared. They're gonna sit on the back burner and wait for the rates to ever come back down, but they're not gonna come back down. What's gonna happen? They're gonna wait, and those prices of home are just gonna continue to go up, continue to go up. So one of the strategies that I'm telling all my clients: get ready, hustle. Let's save money. Stop spending money on things you don't need. Let's start making sure your credit is on point, because now more than ever, credit is such a factor. If you don't have, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have good credit, financing is going to be just as bad for you, because now that credit is so important with
Yeah.
the interest rate. If you have good interest rate, you're going to get the best. I mean, if you have good credit, you're going to get the best interest rate available right now. You
Mhm.
don't want to be in the position of having bad credit and getting a worse interest rate than what they already are, because then like you're really working against yourself, right? So
Especially if you have time to prepare. Like, don't waste the time.
yes, you can't you have to, I always say it's best to be ready for an opportunity and not have one than have an opportunity and not be prepared for it, right?
Right.
So to me, it's like, let's get you ready. Let's prepare. Let's get you your financings ready. Let's get your credit, your savings ready, and let's start looking. That doesn't mean you have to pull the trigger right this minute. But if you do find something and people are going to buy, people are not just going to sit on the back burner, because let me tell you something. This is from not only in a real estate, I've been in the business for almost 10 years now, but I'm also a landlord. One of the things that it's also going up is rent.
Mhm.
Is at an all-time insane high,
Insane. It's
right?
insane.
So if you have people whose rents are going up $2,500 a month, that's a mortgage.
Yeah.
That's a mortgage. That's a mortgage. It's like it, you're just dishing money. Just open a window and just $3,000 every. What you're doing when you're renting.
Something that I feel like potentially could hold some people back is, when if you're renting something, I mean, this isn't always the case, but I feel like when you're renting something, maybe the equivalent of that home for the mortgage payment right now, obviously this is very generalized and it depends on every town. Like some towns that may not be the case, but generally speaking, I feel like sometimes maybe the rental at that same amount maybe is more updated because now the values of the homes have increased. So like maybe to speak to, especially for the first time home buyer, they may have to take the approach of you're not going to buy the HGTV, like, beautiful first time home. And that's okay. Because you can buy a starter home. Most people don't stay in their homes very many years at the beginning. And it could be basically your primary residence that becomes an investment property to then like get you into the next property and the next property. And so I feel like maybe speaking to like one, if rehab loans or things like to that of that nature that maybe people can take advantage of. Maybe grants that people can take advantage of to again get you in your first home. It may not be your forever home, and that's okay. But then maybe working with Fernando and being able to like have him help you see that picture of what it could be.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. 10 years ago, you would give somebody your pre-approval. They would go out on the first weekend and they would say, okay, I've got these 10 houses to choose from. Which one am I going to go with? Now it's like, I mean, maybe there's 10 houses, but they're all gone, or you didn't get an offer accepted. So, you got to think outside of the box. You got to, maybe you find that house that was built in the 70s and it's got nothing's been updated. It's got the old bathroom, it's got the old kitchens, but it's on a great street, it's got a great lot, and it just needs a new. You rehab that kitchen, you rehab the two bathrooms. All of a sudden, that house is just as awesome as that turnkey house that everybody wants. And it's easy to get money for rehab. I mean, we have a conventional rehab program, we have an FHA rehab program. we have programs where we can get, you know, home improvement second mortgages closed after the closing to give people $25,000, $50,000 to fix up the house. So that way the house is the way that they want it to be. And a lot of people they don't see the big picture. They go into a house and they're like, I don't like this house. And it's like, no,
Yes.
you need to look at, just imagine this kitchen if you put 30 grand into it. Just imagine these bathrooms if you put 20 grand into them. All of a sudden, the house is exactly what you're looking for. And maybe that house doesn't have as much activity on it because it's not the perfect turnkey house with the new quartz countertops and stainless steel appliances that everybody wants. And you know, just to touch on something you just mentioned before with rent and you know grants and things of that nature. You know, Mass Housing they just beefed up their down payment assistance program. They're releasing it on March 18th. I had a client that was referred to me about a month ago by a real estate agent. He originally reached out to the realtor to help him find a rental because his lease is expiring in a couple months. And you know the complexes he was looking at are, you know, $3,500 a month. He has to come up with first, last, and security. So you know he's looking at coming up with 10 grand to
Okay.
rent to rent an apartment, first, last, and security. He's got great credit. He makes plenty of money. He didn't think he could buy, or maybe he thought he could buy, but he thought he needed to come up with more money. And I talked to him. I said, "No, you're crazy. Like, I can get you $25,000 down payment assistance for Mass Housing. You're buying a house. You're paying $500 for the appraisal. You come up with some earnest money to show the seller that you're serious about buying the house and taking the house off the market, and then he's literally going to get his earnest money back on the day of the closing because the $25,000 down payment assistance covers everything: down payment, closing costs, prepaids." He went out, got an offer accepted. He's closing like March 28th. And so he's basically buying a decent single family house that he loves. And all he's coming up with out of pocket is like $500 for an appraisal versus going out, renting a place, signing a 1 year lease, and coming up with 10 grand out of pocket for first, last, and security. Like it's
I love that story. You need to blast that story like to everyone you know. That is huge. Because I just feel like a lot of people can't, you know, those are like the too good to be true story. Like, how is that possible? But it's so possible. If
right.
you just have to work with someone who knows these programs.
That's the
And
key.
yeah.
That's the key. You have to, you know, it's like I'm a firm believer. A closed mouth don't get fed.
Yeah.
Closed mouth doesn't get fed. You have to go out there and find the people who are doing this or who can do this, right? It's like you can't sit there and set a goal and say, you know, I work with a lot of first-time home buyers, right? And I preach goal setting, right? You can't have a goal and say, oh, I want to buy me a house this year, but do nothing about it.
Right.
At least get in contact with the realtor, get in contact with the loan officer, ask the right questions, right? Because let me tell you something. That happened because Doug understood the game, understood the possibilities, understood that client situation, and Doug gave him a formula. He was like, here's your situation. Here's a formula. We're going to put it together, marry it, and this is what the results are going to be. That's why it worked.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like a lot of buyers won't even do that because they're intimidated, or they'll say, oh, the market is too crazy. Oh, the interest rate. It's like, no, you got to put yourself in position to understand that there's possibilities. Let me tell you something. In real estate, if there's a way, me and Doug are going to find it. Like, if there's a way we can finagle this deal and make it happen, trust me, we're going to do it. So it's like, don't count yourself out. It's like, no, let's figure it out. Let's get your foot in the door first and then see what the possibilities are.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, I've sent Doug clients where he doesn't sugarcoat it. Fernando, their credit's tough or their numbers are too tight. You know, it's they're not gonna have. All right, so what so that doesn't mean no.
Right.
What is it we got to do? So we got to bump up their credit. We got to fix their taxes. We got to add some income. Maybe we got to add a co-signer. Maybe we can add a husband, father, brother, someone. Right? It's not a no. It's just no. This is a possibility. These are the hoops that we got to jump through to get it. But we're gonna get it done.
And to that point, and again, it's who you surround yourself with, because if that borrower went to talk to their local bank, who, again, not to bash anybody, but went to their local bank for someone who's maybe a loan officer today and tomorrow they're like opening checking accounts and they're not specialized. If it's not in their box, it's not in their box, and move on. Whereas
But
if
it
you,
also, what I find is that how many seconds does it take to say no? One, literally, like one. When all of a sudden a deal comes across your desk and you're like, oh, the credit's bad, or oh, the debt ratios are too high, or oh, it's so easy to say no. But you got to manufacture deals. You got to make deals work. You got to think outside of the box. That's how I make my money. That's how Fernando makes his money. We make deals happen that other people say no to, and
Yeah.
that's what you got to do in this market. So
It's what's stands you out out of the competition, right? You have banks who, like Doug just said, no, I can't. You don't have good credit. Well, shit, come to me. Let's figure it out. What can we do to
yeah,
fix your credit, right? What are some habits that we got to break to get your credit up 40, 50 points so then I can sit you with Doug and get your shit done, right? Because I don't want to be the guy who said no and we couldn't do it, right? Because that doesn't get me referrals.
right,
no, and then in 6, 8, 12 months when they can do it, they're not going to come back to you because you're
right,
the one that said no. So
Exactly.
not everybody comes to me and is pre-approved. Some people's credit needs work. Some people, there's some coaching involved. But you got to build that pipeline for September, just as
right,
it's just as important to build your pipeline for March and April. Every time if I work with somebody and coach somebody and put them in a position, I tell them, I'm like, listen, if you do everything I tell you to do, then we can probably get you pre-approved and ready to go in like a month. Or, on the flip side, it's, this is going to take longer. It's going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 months to get you ready. But if you do everything that I tell you to do, then you're going to be ready to buy later this year or early next year. And they appreciate that because you're putting a game plan together for them. You're not just saying, no, see you later, come back to me in 12 months. They're not going to come back to you in 12 months. Why would they? You didn't even help them or guide them.
That
So,
it,
and then, you put the plan together, you set reminders in Outlook and follow up with them in 6 months. Hey, did you do what I told you to do? Oh my God, you did. Your credit's good. You're ready to buy a house. Or no, you didn't. Okay, well, here, I'm going to remind you to do it and I'm going to follow up with you in a couple months. So hopefully you'll listen to me. And it's just, like I said, you got to be building that future pipeline just as important as building a pipeline for the next 30 to
to
60.
piggyback off of that, right? Because me and Doug do that a lot. Like, I mean, I have clients, Doug knows that we've closed deals where I sat down with them a year ago, legit a year ago. Their shit was all over the place. I sat down with them, coached them for about a good 4 months. Boom. Next, Doug, we're closing a deal for them. It could be a single family in the middle of nowhere, or it could be a multi-family property, right? But it's like we've done it before. Like I've sent referrals to Doug where he sent them back and said, "Hey, we got to coach them up. We got to get them ready to go." All right, well, I think we could bang it out in 4 months, 6 months, even a year. I've had clients that I've worked with over a year and a half of
yeah,
coaching, and they finally did it, right? So it's not like don't tell me I can't,
right,
just tell me how I can, and that's
Right.
kind of like how you want to, chaperone it, right? Because there's a lot of loan officers where, oh, they're not ready, I can't take them. They're too busy. Or, they don't have enough time to coach you. It's like, oh, I guess that guy doesn't want to make any business. So
right,
this is like why me and Doug kind of mesh together so well because we understand the customer service background of it, right? Because I did banking for 8 years and customer service is key. You're dealing with people's livelihood, you're dealing with people's money, credit, savings, right? These are things that people are very, I would say, closed about,
yeah,
and they don't really like being told how to do that stuff,
right,
right? So sometimes you got buyers who, after I coach them, they still don't do, excuse my language, shit, right?
yeah,
But then you have those buyers that actually do it and get it done, and I love to see that because those are what I call, success stories. But
yeah,
then you have clients who are just hard headed. They don't have that financial financial literacy. But it's like, is it possible? 100%. But you need to have the right people around you to be able to escalate that to get it
right.
further down
To
the
make
road.
to get the goal accomplished. Well, we're
Right.
getting close to 30, maybe a little over. So just let's end it with your number one tip or trick for home buyers to walk away with. You go first, Doug.
Number one tip or trick, just get to me early, get to me often. Don't go out and you got to get your mortgage situation figured out before you go out and start looking at houses. There's a strategy involved. It's not just here's a pre-approval letter, good luck. No, it's like, here, let's get you pre-approved, let's get you educated, let's get you prepared. Do I need to work on your credit? Do I need to close some cans of worms on your application before you're actually ready to go make an offer on a house? And then let's work together to help you get an offer accepted. You can't just submit offers in this market and then hope for the best. You gotta work as a team. I gotta reach out to the listing agent. I gotta make them feel warm and fuzzy about the buyer's financing. So it's just get pre-approved sooner than later. That's the most important thing.
Great one. Fernando, what about you?
Really simple. I'm not to get too religious, but I believe God doesn't make any mistakes, right? So you shouldn't hold yourself accountable if you make one. In real estate, when you're either trying to buy or sell something, you have nothing to lose. Try it, go, get it done. Like, put an offer in. If it doesn't happen, so be it. But your time is gonna come. But it takes you, the buyer or the seller, to take the step forward and want to try to do it, right? So it's like, yes, the market is tough. Yes, inventory is low. But guess what? If you don't even try it, you'll never know what can come out of it. You never know. So it's like, do it. Who cares? You have nothing to lose. Let's go. Put the offer in. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, I love that. I love it. And I think we all touched on it too, like the importance of the team. I feel like that's always my number one tip, is like getting a team that gets you, like understands. Again, Fernando attracts these clients who are people who want to set goals, and put like work behind it. Like that is his like dream client. And that's because he makes the effort to like show people that maybe those who weren't necessarily going to buy a home can buy a home with the proper guidance. So, if you're a home buyer like that, it's just because somebody said no to you once doesn't mean that that's really the answer. So it's like putting yourself together with people that are like-minded in that respect and like can get you to achieve your goal is huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
Don't when people don't take no's too well, and especially when you tell them that they can't buy their home.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, it's like an emotional beat. Like they feel defeated, and it's like, no, F you. Don't tell me no. How can I get it done? And just get it done. Period. Right. Don't take no for an answer. Period.
I love that. Well, I thank you guys so much for chatting with me today. You guys are awesome. I'm going to post this video later and tag you. If you are in need of an agent like Fernando and a loan officer like Doug, please reach out to them. And I hope you guys have an awesome day.
You too, guys. God bless. Good job. Let's
keep. You guys are the best.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Talk to you later.